I'm joined now by musician and author Kyle Nicolaides. Kyle, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're in Santa Barbara, California.
I am.
Why the jacket seems like, something unusual for California, at least for somebody like me in Toronto. We figured you'd be like
Yeah.
wearing a t-shirt or something.
Well, California, it gets 60 degrees and people freak out. People think it's an apocalypse. It's been raining 3 or 4 days and everyone's like, what's happening? I lived in Michigan for 2 years and like, this is shorts weather.
Thank you for this book. Not that I speak for, all people with depression, but as a therapist, thank you for this book. Especially that you shared a lot about your personal experience and your experience, transcending depression. So if, the audience knows that this book is called Thank God for Depression, Make Depression the Best Thing to Ever Happen to You, about how to live a better, happier, more fulfilling life and healthier life because of your depression. Wow. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into how would someone be that grateful. But at the top of the show, I played your music video of Howl. Let's start there. Let's start in 2013 and go from there. So you were on Conan O'Brien. You were touring with the Smashing Pumpkins. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And fame and glory, probably, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But you had depression before that. But I'm curious as how did your depression manifest when you were you were a rock star at the time?
It was the underlying monster behind everything. And it was also the catalyst for everything I did, which is really interesting to say because I look back and I'm like, I wonder how I did all those things. And the truth was that I was so depressed and so anxious, and the fear that came with that, the panic attack and the anxiety telling me, hey, you better do something with your life. Your life only matters if you're famous. Your life only matters if you make money. Your life only matters if people know your music, if you write good music.
Yeah.
And then the drive of feeling so depressed at 18 or 19 that I didn't want to be alive. And the only solution my brain could come up with was, maybe if you get famous, it'll heal you. Or maybe if you achieve your childhood dream, it'll fix you. So looking back, it's just a classic material trap. And I've read about it in so many spiritual books now. It's the classic, like, if I achieve material fame, it will fix me. So I got all the fame. I got the money. I got the credit. And it not only didn't change anything, but it was shocking. Because I remember after doing all that stuff, I was driving in LA to my vocal teacher's house, and I never felt more like a failure. I never felt more ashamed. I felt like I did all this stuff and it didn't change anything. And that was a rude awakening. So all it did was, it's like that saying, money only enhances who you are when you get it. And I think that with depression and anxiety, all it did was heighten the depression I had. Now I was depressed with money. Now I was afraid and anxious with money and responsibilities. So all it did was just stack. It just stacked trauma. And it was really confusing because I had all these people around me in the music industry either lifting me up and telling me how great I was, but I didn't believe it because I thought I was just the most unworthy person on the planet because of depression. And all these narratives just either stayed or got stronger, and it didn't fix anything. And it wasn't until everything fell apart that I had to face the parts of me that I wasn't able to face or didn't know how to face. So it's also the classic, maybe these external things will fix me, instead of what if I take the inward journey? What if I look inside? So, and it colored everything from, it's really like, and what I learned, and especially looking back now that I have clarity, was that when you're depressed, it's like putting glasses on. So everything you see is tainted by that. So my business relationships, the way that I dealt with people, the way that I related with people, it was coming from a depressed, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. So how can you do any sort of business when you're coming from that place? Even songwriting, all the songs I wrote were about, I want to die, I don't like this life. So it bled all into the songwriting, into the creativity. I couldn't produce records because I couldn't think. I had so much brain fog. So, I look back on people that I was in the music industry at the same time with, and, their careers went like this and mine sort of went, and I have to be compassionate with myself and just give myself credit, because when you're depressed or when you're having serious trauma or serious panic attacks or anxiety, it's really hard to function in the world. So that's sort of how it colored it. And it wasn't until everything fell apart that, again, I was actually able to get some space and face myself.
Like, did you crash afterwards, like after a show, and you really felt the depression?
Yeah, it was a pretty vicious cycle. And now I know the relationship with anger and depression, but back then I didn't know that. And there's a lot of ancient wisdom that say anger and depression are two sides of the same coin.
They are.
So it was a roller coaster of putting all my worth in external circumstances. And what would happen would be, when I was on stage, it was the only time I was free. But what I would do is I would take all the rage I felt, all the rage I had as a youth, all the self-loathing, all the anger of being depressed, of hating myself, and I would bring it on stage, and then I would destroy things. I would smash guitars, I would scream, I would contort my body, break amps, get in trouble, basically. And then the show would be over, and all the energy would still be in my body, and then that would turn into depression, and it would turn into being suicidal. So there was no escape from that. And I look back at my tour journal, and it would say things like, Texas, El Paso, never been more depressed, to New Orleans, like suicidal, London, want to die. So it's just this whole thread followed me. And then it became a show, because people then expected the crazy frenetic energy of me to go on stage and destroy myself or smash myself. And, when I stopped doing that, because I realized how much damage it was doing, then everyone said, oh, what's wrong with you? Where's your passion go? And then that made me go, well, wait, what else is wrong with me? So it was it was a tough time touring. And we can also get into like how bad touring is for your mental health, because people are finally realizing that, of not getting any sleep, staying in a van for 10 hours a day, being around 4 people all the time, sharing a hotel room with them, not having any alone time, eating junk food or gas station food, or not having access to any sort of clean food. It's the most disruptive schedule for your mental health. And, I was over caffeinating, I was smoking weed, I was doing all these things to cope, so it's really, I forget what your question is, but I just went on a rant. It's hard. It's hard for your mental health. And a lot of artists are sensitive. A lot of artists struggle with anxiety or depression. And then, it's also hard being in a band, in a rock band, and starting out, because our experience was, we'd get to a venue and there'd be 4 people on a Tuesday, and we're like, whoa, we just drove 13 hours to play to 4 people. Like, be grateful for it, And then the next day, maybe there's 60 people. And then the next day you're playing to a radio festival where there's 2,000 people. So it's sort of a Zen masterclass, and like, I'm a big deal, I'm a small deal, I'm a big deal, I'm a small deal. I matter, I don't matter, I matter, I don't matter, But when you're young and you have no frame of reference for any of that, it can be a roller coaster from hell. And then it's such a head trip, because you see other bands get famous, you see other bands fall apart, your band gets famous, but it doesn't feel like you thought it would be. Like, it's just really a wild adventure. And it's surreal. It's surreal. And like I remember one moment we were on tour at the Smashing Pumpkins, we were opening, and we were on this European tour, and the whole just our touring crew was just a disaster. Like I'm gonna write stories about that, but I went on stage one time and I was just so angry, just fuming, and I got off stage, and their tour manager grabbed me and he's like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're living the dream, you're on tour. Like, what are you so angry about, you know?" And I just wasn't, you know, I didn't have any tools of how to ground, of what to do with emotions, what to do with depression, what to do with anxiety. So, and the music industry wasn't really focused on that. Like my old manager said, I put people on tour when I shouldn't put them on tour because we needed to make money. You know, it's kind of wild. It's a weird industry. It's a weird industry to just put, you know, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars into a bunch of 20-year-olds and just put them on the fucking road and just say, "Go ahead." It's confusing. So,
What I understand, and we talked earlier about depression. I shared that myself, I struggle with bipolar depression, and that your depression wasn't like during the height of Beware of Darkness. Your depression was there when you were younger, and there's a trend in your family of suicides and very, very serious depression. So you came out of that in some ways with the genetics of it. But tell me more about growing up and how did the depression manifest when you were younger?
the depression, I remember more the anxiety and the trauma from being a kid. The depression, I don't really remember until I was like a teenager. And it started in high school, just starting to get obsessed with death and darkness. And the clearest sign for me was I went to USC for 2 years, and I was the type of person, I don't want to say I was the type of person, but when I got there, I was able to talk to anyone. I could talk to strangers. I made friends with everyone in the dorm. Everybody knew me. Like, you know, I just felt really open. And then something happened. I don't really know what happened. It was weird. Like, it was being in LA, maybe I was trying to get signed, but I remember walking into an elevator with like 4 people I knew, and it was just like my light went out. And it was the weirdest feeling. It was like cosmic or like divine, of just someone going, boop, like your light is now out. And after that moment, the depression just ran my life. And right after that, I dropped out of school, and I told my parents, give me 6 months to get a record deal. And what happened was I went from having such a structured life to the minute, to the hour of classes. You have to be here. You have these responsibilities, to just having open time, that it was the first moment in my life. And I'm really grateful that I got to experience this young, but it was the first time in my life that there was space. So of course, when there's space, it was like all the fears came up, all the depression came up, all the panic attacks came up. And I had no vocabulary for it. Like, no one in my family talked about mental health. No one talked about depression. No one talked about anxiety. I was just a foreign thing. So when I started having panic attacks, there was a little voice that was like, I think this might be a panic attack, but there was no other idea of like, maybe I should do something about it. Should I tell someone about it? No. You know, I remember watching my great uncle have a panic attack in public when I was a kid, and I was like, like that's like debilitating, like couldn't walk, couldn't move. And it was this weird, you know, depression was just sort of weird underlying thing that just no one really talked about. And it's very Greek. It's like a very Greek, like pride thing, to try to hide your problems, to you know, have someone die of something and then they say they died of something else because there's shame around how they died, or there's taboo around it. And I think that was the thing. It was kind of ruled by taboo. Like it was taboo to say you have depression, or, you know. So I look back on my childhood and I was like, you know, there's a whole other sort of aspect of my being that I'm not talking about right now. It's like premature birth trauma, and that has to do with more like anxiety and nervous system stuff. But, I think the depression, I was just like a sensitive kid and I was afraid of everything. So,
What struck me in the book, you talked about suicide. I'm going to read this part and I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on it. When you say you want to kill yourself, what does that even mean? What and who are you even killing? Is it really yourself that you want to kill, or is it something else? Do you even know what you're killing? Are you killing the human role you're playing? Do you want to kill the witness consciousness behind everything? That's strong. What does that really mean?
that's good. I couldn't articulate that better than I did then. What does it mean? It's so funny you asked this because I just thought about this last week because I still have a voice that goes, kill yourself, kill yourself.
Wow, even today.
Yeah. And I don't have any attachment to it, but I'm still curious where I'm like, And I did a little like ceremony, and again, like to sort of echo what I wrote earlier in that book, like the answer I got was there's nothing to kill. And I think it's so, and I know that I'm gonna try to elaborate on that because I don't want to get into like weird spiritual bypassing, but I think there's different perspectives and orientations when you talk about I want to kill myself, because the first is there's parts work. Like maybe there's just a part of yourself that you're really unhappy with. Like I think when people say I want to die, I don't think they actually want to die. I think they just want the pain or the suffering to end.
Absolutely. That's what clients say.
Yeah.
And I experienced that too myself. I, looking back, didn't want to die, but I wanted to die long enough to get rid of the pain.
Yeah. So that's the thing. That's the thing. Like I really don't think that anyone wants to die. And I think if you look into parts work, maybe there's a part that feels so unworthy, so traumatized, so guilty, so ashamed, whatever. Like you can work with it on the very human level of, what part of you wants to die? What part of you needs healing? Maybe that's a better question. Like what part of you needs acceptance? What part of you needs compassion? And then I think there's the spiritual level of we're all emanations of the divine. So you could say we're all pieces of God. So how you treat yourself is how you treat God. And can you really kill God? And I know that's getting a little far out there, but
Not for me.
yeah.
That's exactly what I've been thinking.
Yeah, because it's like my understanding is like we all come from the same source, and that source is composed of everything material on this planet. And when you're talking about witness consciousness, that's sort of the ultimate, like, well, who can you kill witness consciousness? Can you kill the watcher, like, by killing this body? Because there's schools of thought that say when your body dies, the consciousness does not die, the mind does not die, they go on. So then there's kind of really interesting, like, philosophical, not philosophical, like, spiritual questions of, like, what are you actually doing? And then there's also a level of, like, it's such a rare opportunity to be given a human birth. I've heard, like, it's such a precious thing to be born in a human body. From spiritual teachings, like we could have been born as a dog or a grasshopper, and we got these bodies.
Buddhist teaching.
We have a rare gift to transform suffering. Yeah. So from that perspective, that's what keeps me going. Of, hey, I want to see the ride to the very end. Like, I don't want to get off the ride before I know how this is going to end. And then there's also, like, I've heard there's, like, pretty bad karma about killing yourself. And that's, like, kind of like another just addendum, like, bonus thing. But if you prescribe to the idea of reincarnation, it guarantees a lesser reincarnation, I think. So there's practical levels to not do it. There's spiritual levels to not do it. There's, all these different arguments against doing it. And I think that, just talking about that and exploring it can give perspective shifts that, and you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I had a meditation teacher say, like, do you have the mind that you had at 10? Do you have the mind goals, emotions that you had at 20? Do you have the mind, emotions, you know, consciousness you have at 30? Like, you're changing all the time. And that's the thing with depression, is that it fills you with this fable and story that things are static, that your suffering is static. But the thing about this life is it's impermanent and it's changing all the time. And I have to remember that, because I still suffer. I still get caught in, you know, anger and anxiety and all these things. And I have to remember, like, hey, this is going to pass. And I think depression, it passes as well, but it can just be hard to remember that.
Thank you for sharing that, especially, you know, for people that are watching the show, that, you know, depression isn't like totally gone in your life. You still experience it. But I do know that part of your story, and you talked about it in the book, is that the insight you're talking about, right? Your realization stemmed from an ayahuasca experience. And tell us more about that. And like, did it get rid of your depression for a period of time? What was your experience with it?
So after my band broke up, I moved back to Santa Barbara. I bottomed out completely. Like, I had nothing to hide behind. I was drinking, I was going out, I was depressed, I was suicidal. And it was actually the head of my old record label. Like, I was texting her one day and I said, hey, we should do an ayahuasca ceremony. Or we didn't even know how it happened. It was really bizarre. Like, all I knew was she texted me back one day and she's like, all right, I got the shaman. We're going to bring like 9 of our friends and we're going to go do ayahuasca. And it was really... At the same time, I started taking antidepressants and I started seeing a therapist for the first time. And that was the first time in my entire life that I felt like I was in the upswing. And there was some space between me and my emotions, and, you know, I could, there was more space to deal with what I was dealing with. And then part of the ayahuasca was you can't be on antidepressants because it can be lethal. It can be very dangerous. So I made the decision to get off the antidepressants, which was the most terrifying decision of my life. And there was some part of me that knew I needed a big baseball bat, like Hail Mary, not a baseball bat, like a big home run healing. And the antidepressants were, you know, helping me get up the ramp, but I needed something that was going to go like that and just wake me up. And that's what it did. That's what the ayahuasca did. Like, you know, I can talk about experiences of non-duality or visiting a plane of limitless expansion and boundlessness. Like, I can talk about that, and those are all concepts, and words limit those concepts. But then when you actually have an embodied experience of that, of like realizing, oh, I come from a place that's eternal, I come from a place that's infinite, I am that, I'm not who I thought I was. Like, I thought I was this little being, but I'm actually just an expansive sky that goes on forever. Like, you can call it whatever, God, spirit, source, absolute consciousness, you know, the goddess. Like, so I got lucky and I had an experience of that. And it was shocking. And it was so much energy that it just completely like knocked the depression out. And the title of the book and the whole idea of the book comes from the morning after that ceremony.
Oh, really?
And
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That came right afterwards.
Yeah, so the next morning I woke up and my head was just in a million pieces of just, you know, weeping, crying, trying to figure out what happened. And I remember thinking, like, well, what led me here? Like, how did I get so lucky to have this union with God, to feel divinity, to know it, to touch it again? And I realized that depression was the prerequisite suffering. Like, depression led me to this healing. And then that made me, you know, do a huge double take, because if you would have asked me at that time, I would have said depression was the worst thing that ever happened to me. It ruined my life. It destroyed my professional career. But what it actually did was it led me to the most important path of my life and the most important work of my life. So that nugget is what I wanted to present anyone who's suffering with depression, and just saying, like, hey, what if everything you know about depression is wrong? What if it's leading you to some outcome that is so unbelievably beautiful that you never could have predicted? And what if there's wisdom and guidance and love in it. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about like the predicament of being human. It's like suffering can be the greatest catalyst for waking up to truth and waking up to reality and waking up to who we actually are. And it's, you know, I'm still kind of grappling with that because it's interesting because like the whole tenure in my music industry was that too. Like, and it's a hard pill to swallow because there's the part of me that like wants material fame and wants material success, but then there's the other part of me that's like, all right, you're a spiritual being. Anything on the path is used for your awakening and for your liberation. And whatever force guiding your life knew that you needed to have that experience in the music industry and have this experience of depression so you could come back home. So then the idea with the book is like, I just didn't want people to suffer as much as I did. I'm like, what if my 10 years could be your 2 months because of all the wisdom in this book? Like, I just want to show everyone, show people with depression and next anxiety, the exits and what works so they can pick a doorway, go with it, and walk that path on their own.
I'm sure a lot of people that are watching that have depression are kind of confused. You touched on it that it can be a gift, you know, suffering can be a gift, but why did you choose the phrase, thank God for depression? Because a lot of people probably would say, no, I'm not grateful. I don't thank God for my depression.
So that's the tricky part, right? It's almost parts work with depression. Because there's the part of you that thinks this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I hate it. And then there's also a very potent truth to depression where it limits the way you think. It limits your energy. It limits possibility. And going back to the thinking, it can just spur negative thinking. So it's sort of the irony of like, you're locked in a box, but you can't see you're locked in a box. And then you're thinking, well, how do I get out of this box? So I don't know if that was a good analogy, but so I'm sort of dealing with like trying to explain like these are the parameters of depression to help you be aware of that and just know like, oh, I'm depressed right now. I'm going to be thinking more negativity. I'm going to be thinking more negatively. Oh, I'm depressed right now. I'm going to have a hard time thinking of anything optimistic or positive. So it's knowing that and acknowledging that and not bypassing that and saying that this is the truth of my situation, you know, and tapping on it or just tending to that part. And all I want to do is just carve a little bit of space to say like, what if it's not what you think it is? Because I know from my own experience, when I saw depression as a terrorist and when I saw it as the worst thing to ever happen to me, all it did was create panic, fear, and anxiety and more depression. Because what happens is if you think something, it's sort of, I call it the 7-layer shit cake in the book, but if you label something in your life as a problem, then the next step is, okay, something's wrong. And then when you think something's wrong and there's a problem, then your mind's going to go, well, I need to get out of this. I need to figure this out. I need to do something. And when you start to take action from that ground, it's a completely different action than the spaciousness of, okay, I'm feeling depressed. What does my body need? What is the depression trying to tell me? So when it comes to saying thank God for depression, I know it can sound like to someone who's depressed, like basically like me being like, fuck you. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. And that's not what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm just trying, and here's the thing with depression too, it's like, if you look at, I like to look at mental health, and I think we talked about this in the earlier call, but I like to talk about mental health and trauma and its forms of conditioning. So depression conditions you. It forces you to think a certain way. You take certain actions because you're depressed, and then it keeps you in these loops. And anxiety is like the certain way, like addiction is a certain way. So when you're stuck in these loops, you're depressed. A depressed mind can't heal itself. You need outside stimuli, and whether that's a therapist with ideas or different perspectives, whether that's a plant medicine with a completely different body of consciousness to hit you with a charge. And that's what happened to me, was that like my depressed mind was sunk so low that when the ayahuasca came, it literally was like TNT and just blew it up and moved all the energy. Because that's another thing I haven't talked about yet, is depression as energy, which is very interesting, because I got the most depressed I've ever been last 2 months ago, since the depression healed, because I lost my grandfather. I was dealing with a bunch of really hard family issues, and depression came, and I remember saying, okay, there goes your brand, but no, I'm just kidding. But I remember saying like, okay, this is here.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
I was saying like, this is here. It's different than the last time because you're a different person. You have different tools. You have different consciousness. And I did breath work, and it moved all the energy out, and it was astonishing. So I think that, now I'm just rambling, and I don't know if I answered your question at all, but I just think back to the message of like, I just want people to carve a little bit of space and a little bit of possibility to say like, what if this is not what I think it is? What if there's things I can try that will lead me to some outcome that I never could have dreamed of? And like, what if there's a purpose for the depression? Because depression, it tells you my life is meaningless, I don't matter, which is it's all not true. Like, it's all stories. It's all not true. It's like we're all children of the mother. Like, we all have a unique purpose to play. There's a reason why we're all incarnated on this planet. There's certain work we're here to do. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question. I think I just rambled, but
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that provides us a little bit more understanding about, the title of the book.
mm-hmm.
Your journey, like your insight came from ayahuasca, but I know, and you don't necessarily have to have a psychedelic experience to have this insight. So what would you suggest to someone to kind of find the insight that you did, but without psychedelics?
It's a good question. So I'm coming out with a depression survival guide in a couple months, and it's like 65 or 70 ideas to get you out of depression as soon as possible. And it's just like a bullet point list. And it's things, it's in 3 categories. Let me see, I've never talked about this out loud, so let me see if I can get this. It's wheat, radishes, and acorns. And basically, wheat you can grow really quickly, harvest it. Radishes take a couple weeks, and then acorns are like, take a couple months. So like what that means is wheat, it's like, what are ideas you can do right now to heal depression? Like, what are things you can do right now to change your mood? And then there's the next step, which is, what are the things that might take a week or two to like implement, but it'll have a big impact on your mental health? And then the last are like the big Hail Mary swings that you need a lot of preparation for, like a meditation retreat, a medicine ceremony. So if someone is suffering, like, I would really focus on things that move energy. And, when I got depressed this last time, I was gravitating towards silent meditation and journaling, which they're good. But depression is energy that gets stuck in your body. And things like holotropic breath work, dancing, movement, even energy sessions from people, like acupuncture, craniosacral, emotional release techniques, like things like that are actually going to move the anger out of your body and start getting things flowing. Like, that was the biggest revelation I had, and that's what I would say to anyone who's suffering right now. And there's a big difference, and I think it's ultimately knowing yourself too, because like going to the gym is helpful and it moves energy, but it doesn't move energy like breath work does, or like EFT tapping, or even TRE. Like, TRE has been a game changer for me. So there's all these like modalities that I don't think a lot of people know about that will physically move the energy out of the body. And I think that's when people get brain fog and depressed and angry. And also just start paying attention to like anger. Because I know with myself, like anytime I start to feel mad, anytime I start to feel depressed or down, it's because there was some part of me that missed the anger or the irritation or a boundary. which is really interesting now to just watch that. And like I can set a timer of like, look, I was angry for 4 hours, I didn't move the energy, and then it's like, boop, mood goes down, dip, depression.
Yeah, with my question about, psychedelics and finding insight without psychedelics, let's talk a bit about holotropic breathing, because I've experienced that. And holotropic breathing, tell us more about your experience, is a way to access the part of you and the part of everything without any psychedelic whatsoever. It's a breathing method that brings you into an altered state of consciousness. What was your experience with it?
It's a good question. I haven't done it that much, honestly, but I've done it a handful of times, and it has just set me right. Like, it's just like spiritual chiropractor. And the last time I did it, I was suffering. Like in December, like I was just, I was holding a lot of family stuff, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was exhausted. I was overworked. And, something that used to happen to me in medicine ceremonies was that I would cough energy up. And if you would hear me do it, it sounds like I'm dying. Like every time I do it, a family member is like, "Are you okay? Like, what's happening?" And it's a form of purging. And I think with psychedelics, it can move energy out of your body. And that's why when, people throw up on ayahuasca, it's literally energy or trauma coming out of your body that was physically stuck. And that can be coughing. Some people burp. Some people shake it out. And I think that holotropic breathwork can do that. And it can also give you a spiritual experience. Like, I've dropped right back into sacred spaces and wild. I've had medicine-like experiences, and then I've had like closure on some medicine experiences that I've had. So it's very mystical. And silent meditation is also a huge one. Like a 3-day silent meditation retreat. Like, I've been struggling with ADHD my whole life, which is also a trauma response. And I went on a 3-day retreat in Mexico, and 3 days, I've never felt happier. I've never felt more present. I've never felt more centered. So there's sort of a kind of huge matrix of just different factors that can contribute to, any sort of like dissonance in your emotional field.
The book is very positive, actually. If you read it, it really isn't what you may think from the title of the book. In the book, you said something really profound, and it really hit me, and I'll read it, and maybe you can tell me more. And just for people to understand that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So in the book, you said, there is an end date to the pain. It's temporary. Depression is only a chapter of your life, not the entire novel. More importantly, it's not who you are, not who you ever were, and won't be who you will be. Can you tell us more about that?
I'm like, it's so funny you read these quotes, because I'm like, who wrote that? I was like, that's pretty good. That's
An
really
inspired guy,
I was like, I know. I was like, I don't even like. I'm just gonna ramble on top of that. I really know what I could add to that. I mean, I think it sort of goes back to this idea of like, you're not who you think you are, and that can be really freeing. It's keeping your view vast instead of limited. It's choosing to place your identity in something bigger than just a human body, but not bypassing that and also tending to it.
What is also helpful in the book is the journal prompts that you have in there. One is kind of based on what we were talking about earlier. A journal prompt in Kyle's book would say, write out 5 ways your depression could be a gift. How has it made you a better person? How has it led you to good things? What are some other exercises? Because there's a fair amount of suggestions in there. What are some other suggestions or journal prompts in your book that you could highlight?
Suggestions or journal prompts? So I don't know if this is in the book, but I find it really helpful. It's EFT tapping. So what I write is just tap the center of your chest, like your heart center, and then vent. So what that means is I can trying to think if I could do it right now about something. So if you're suffering about anything, if you're depressed, or if you're feeling any certain way, this can help get to the source of what you're feeling and then what you need. So like I have a friend who didn't text me back for 2 weeks, and she's a very close friend, and I could like tap on that. And what you do is you just vent and you just say everything you're feeling about it and get it out, because it's that idea of like when things stay in, that's when it festers and turns upside down into depression or fear or self-loathing. So I could say like, oh, my friend didn't text me back. I texted her 3 times. I wanted to hang out with her and she didn't text me back. And then I saw her yesterday and she didn't say anything about it. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, did I do something? Does she not like me anymore? Like, it makes me feel really afraid. Like, I feel afraid that I'm going to lose my friend. Like, I wish she would have told me what happened. And then you just keep going down the like rabbit hole of like, okay, like, oh, I feel really like alone. I feel really unworthy. I feel really afraid that I'm going to lose my friend. Like, it feels like loss. And then what that does is it sort of takes it from up here of like, oh my God, she didn't text me back, to like, oh, I feel like I'm losing something. So then, I don't know if my hand's on camera. So then when you can tend to this part, it's a completely different game. And depression's sort of like that too. Like, you can wake up and be like, oh fuck, I feel depressed. Like, and then get all your feelings out about that you feel depressed. You'd be like, I hate that I feel like this. Why do I feel like this? I'm so scared. Like, is this ever going to end? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I just want to kill myself. Oh, just go die. And then you just vent and get all that stuff out. And then you keep trusting the process. And you could do this for 5 or 10 minutes. And then I guarantee you there's going to be one moment where it switches. Like, I'm really afraid that my life is going to be like this. And then, you could say like, okay, like, what do I need? Like, is there something I need today? Like, is there something I need to do? Like, what would make me feel better? Because when there's all the noise of thoughts, it's usually like really fast thoughts of like, oh, I don't want to face it. Something's wrong. Again, problems, something's wrong. Like, oh, resistance. And then when you process all those things, then you get to the layer below, and there's usually like a very tender, vulnerable part that's just like, I'm really afraid. I'm terrified. Am I okay? Am I safe? Am I protected? And then when you tend to that part, it's a completely different game. It's like couples where it's like if you get in a fight with your spouse and someone's screaming, it's not because they're angry. I mean, they might be angry, but it's usually because some part of them doesn't feel safe. So it's like, what part are you tending to? Like, are you talking to the part, like the defender part that just needs to be loud and protective? Or like, do you realize like there's like an inner child over there that feels terrified? So it's like the kind of wild matrix and mental, what's the word? Mental ninja gymnastics of just dealing with psyches and parts and stuff. One of the best journal prompts. This is the same sort of idea. It was the journal prompt of writing a letter to depression, which I don't think a lot of people have ever thought about. And I got it from a money book where it said write a letter to money, and I was like, because it's the same thing. It's like the relationship you have with money depends on how much money you have, and it's the same thing with depression. Where like imagine if depression was a person standing in front of you, and all you do is hate it. Like, all you do is just like, I hate you. I don't want you to be here. Like, fuck you. Like, you're the worst thing to ever happen to me. You're only going to get a certain amount of responses back from it. So when you're able to get all those things out and express yourself, again, it's like EFT tapping, it's parts work, then that part of you feels satiated, and then you can sort of relax and be like, oh, I wonder who this actually is. It's like again, it's like a relationship. It's like you don't get someone to change by screaming at them. You get someone to change by learning who they are, what their deepest needs are, what their deepest desires are, and where they want to go.
So, folks, the book is called Thank God for Depression, Kyle Nicolaides, and I just want to shift. I want to talk about your music career recently, and you said you have another book coming out.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe next year, or
so I have two. I have Thank God for Anxiety, which is a shamanic, psychedelic, energetic, spiritual approach to healing anxiety in your nervous system, which it's like in its second draft, and it's on its own process. And then I have sort of like I planned on it as like an in-between book, but it wound up being 20,000 words somehow. It's like it became a bigger project than I thought, but that's the Depression Survival Guide, and I think I'm just gonna do like a soft release on that and just put it on my website, put it on my email list, and make it like $10 and just have it be like a resource for people when they need it. So
I look forward to that.
yeah, and too.
I'm going to shift, but before I shift into your current music career, folks, at the end of the book, just to show you how positive it is, Kyle wrote, "Depression is here to take you on an adventure. It's here to make you the best version of yourself you can be. I hope this book helps shift your perspective on it and change your life in a positive way. And I hope one day you'll say, thank God for depression." What a way to end a book. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think people in this interview, have a clear idea of where you want it to go with the book. And I respect the fact that you are taking some of the stigma out of depression and what your struggles were, being vulnerable, talking about it, but also how you transcended it. So let's talk about your current music career. Last year you had an album called Ceremony Volume 1, but that was with the band, right?
I had the wildest side hustle of my life in playing in ayahuasca ceremonies for 4 years. And a close friend of mine said I should start recording the performances. So I would go into these ceremonies, which were in houses, residential areas up and down California, and I would play for 4 hours straight to 20 people in a room on ayahuasca while I'm on ayahuasca. And I'm singing in English, Spanish, Sanskrit, Portuguese, channeling, improvising, and they're just wild ass field recordings. Like people are throwing up in them. The energy is palpable. Like you can feel the energy in the room. And what I would do is I would record the ceremony sets for the participants and send it to them just privately. And then there was one where I just thought, you know what, I should just put this out to see what happens, and I did. So I'm probably gonna take it down when I start putting solo music out. But yeah, that's there.
You were sharing with me earlier that this album helped people kind of revisit their psychedelic experience, their experience with ayahuasca, and I imagine would help them continue with their insight.
Yeah, that's why. So I have a lot of ceremony recordings, but that's why I would give them to people to help them integrate. So then, during that time, another seed got planted of. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre, life and just changing direction and passion. Like I can't play rock music anymore. I try, and it's just not in my heart. So I started writing acoustic, like devotional music, and for lack of a better word, medicine music. So what's a song someone would need to hear in ceremony? Because the thing about being in ceremony is that the veil is thin, and people are very susceptible to being reprogrammed, which is it was a really interesting place to be in as a music facilitator, because I realized, like, wow, my words have a lot of weight here. What I say, people are going to hear them, and hear them on a level that's so deep beyond any day-to-day perception they have. And it's interesting to go back to like the EFT tapping. Like I took a course in it, and there's this idea of what if statements, where it's asking yourself, like, what if I'm worthy of love? What if I'm safe, warm, wrapped in love? What if I'm enough? And it's like planting these seeds in people that are positive. Like, wait, like, what if there's nothing wrong with me? So, some of the songs have that, but then a lot of the songs are just like, what's a message that someone would need to hear? Like if they're really suffering, if they're really struggling, and there's a song that me and my ex wrote 10 songs together, and I'm just finishing that up. But then I sound like a mess right now. I have 10 solo songs that I cut on my own that are sort of like the same vein. And it's like just really beautiful, chill, acoustic. There's acoustic guitar with strings and mellotrons, and it's just like very gentle and chill. and I'm terrified to put it out, and I'm terrified to like rebrand myself, and I'm doing it anyway. So, you know, again, like I think I told this before we started the call, but it's like, you know, people, even my parents, bro, like my parents, like, when are you gonna do your rock band again? You know, and I'm just like, I have no desire to do that, but people got to know me as like, oh, he shreds guitar, he plays loud amps, he's a killer on stage, you know, he smashes things, he's amazing. And then there's this other part of me that's like just loves 0-7 and loves really chill music and just wants to like feed that part. So I'm again, like back to fragmentation. I'm like, you know, I thought those were separate parts, but no, I'm like they're both here, and I can do both and I can be both. So I'm just tending to that part of me, and it's cool because I was in the music industry for 15 years, and it was people telling me what to do, telling me what to write, telling me what I can't do. And now I'm independent. I'm just like, well, I got to trust my own guide, trust my own heart, trust my own soul, and see where that goes. And I think it's going to be a lot more sustainable, and I can build on my own and build in a way that is sustainable for my nervous system and going to be a lot healthier than just shooting up to the moon and wreaking everything on the way. So,
well, we look forward to your acoustic solo efforts. Winding down here, on the show, we end with a quote. Now, I know you gave this to me a while back, so, you know, take your time with the meaning of it. The quote you gave me is from Tao Te Ching, and I'll read it here. Act without doing, work without effort. Think of the small as large and the few as many. Confront the difficult while it is still easy. Accomplish the great task by a series of small acts. What is that? Imagine it speaks to you, but what spoke to you about that quote?
it's so beautiful hearing it. I've never had anyone read it to me.
It's beautiful. The rhythm of it, yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, it makes me think of when I was playing in medicine ceremonies, my prayer was always medicine, use my voice, use my hands, use my sound, use whatever I have to help people heal. And my other prayer was like, I don't want to put my own ego on this. I don't want to put my own spin on this. Like, I just want to be a clear vessel and a clear channel. And the stories are crazy because at the end of when I was playing those ceremonies, I would improv for 4 hours and I didn't know what I was singing. I didn't know what I was going to say. And just like, I would trust. And it was the ultimate meditation. I remember one time the morning after, this girl comes up to me. She's like, how did you do that? And I was like, do what? She's like, how did you do that? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. She's like, I had a question, and every time I asked that question, you sang the answer out. And it happened for 3 hours. And I was like, it's not me. Like, I can't take any credit for that. And I think that as an artist, I write songs and I write books, and I'm never doing those things alone.
Mm-hmm.
I am never alone when I do those things.
As you mentioned earlier, when I read from your book, you're going, wow, I don't know who wrote that.
Yeah, same. And it's interesting because I know the most times I have suffered in my life is when I have relied on my own human will and intellect to get through things. Those have been the hardest times in my life when I'm trying to force and push and figure it out and like basically just use a very masculine framework to like beat my life into submission. And then I know all the times when I surrender and I open to the flow and I get curious and I just say like, hey, like, what am I supposed to do today? Like, and I talk about this with songwriting because, you know, I could approach a piano in 2 different ways. I could go to the piano and say, I need a hit. I need a song right now. Let's go. And that maybe that's okay. Like, but it's going to lead to a certain path. Or I could approach the piano and go, what am I feeling right now? What's alive here? What does the piano have to say? And then that turns into the more like opening to the flow of like, what is going to channel through me? What's going to flow through me? And it kind of ties back to depression in a lot of ways of what we're talking about it. But I just know that like, I love doing that. Like, I love partnering with the goddess or just bigger sources of consciousness. And I love getting out of the way, and I've been blessed to be able to do that with songwriting and art and creativity. And I lost it for a while because of the music industry, and I had to fight to get it back and work a really hard time to get it back. And then the ceremonies were a really good channel of that. So I don't know. It's like you can do the same, you could do the same act with two very different energies, and I know that one leads to a lot of suffering and one is present and curious. And I was thinking about life, where it's like life is just tending to what's in front of you right now. Like, it's just like, what is in front of you right now, and what is the energy that needs to be met with? And sometimes that's a feather, sometimes that's a sword. So it's just like, yeah. So I love that quote. Every time I hear it, I'm like, man, it's so beautiful. It's just, yeah.
Well, this has been great.
Good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story on the show, as well as your insight, and especially, thank you for providing the audience with some hope. And I'm so happy that you survived the rock star period of your life, which some guys don't.
I know that, I had a mushroom journey about that, of like, Chris Cornell died,
Yeah.
Chester died, Anthony Bourdain died, like all these guys, just suicide and depression. It's heartbreaking. And I think about them a lot. I'm like, man, like, you think they had everything, right? Everything. It's like, man, if someone would have given him a dose of medicine, if someone would have just gave him some sort of hope or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Kyle, again, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. You're a good guy. You're a good man.
Thanks.